In the musty vaults of the Providence Historical Society, a faded photograph from March 1904 lay untouched for over a century. The image captured the Underwood family in the opulent parlor of their Federal Hill mansion. Jonathan Underwood, a prosperous industrialist, his wife Beatrice, a refined woman of New England lineage, and their newly hired housekeeper, a woman whose presence would later unravel a chilling mystery. The photograph, buried among dusty records from an old insurance fraud case, held a clue that would expose one of America's most cunning and elusive serial killers. The housekeeper's right hand, casually resting on Beatrice's chair, bore jagged scars across its knuckles and palm, marks that matched descriptions in 16 police reports spanning nearly 2 decades. Each report, filed by different witnesses in different cities, described the last woman seen with the wives of prominent men before those women met their demise in inexplicable household mishaps. This is the story of Elizabeth Hayes, a woman whose calculated cruelty terrorized Providence's elite for 16 years, hidden behind a mask of servitude and sympathy. Providence in 1904 was a city of contrasts, a bustling hub of industry and wealth built on textiles, jewelry, and maritime trade. Its Federal Hill and Benefit Street neighborhoods were adorned with grand Victorian mansions, their ornate facades and towering spires symbols of Rhode Island's industrial triumph. Cobblestone streets echoed with the clatter of horse-drawn carriages, occasionally interrupted by the rumble of early automobiles. The air carried the sharp tang of coal smoke mingling with the salty breeze from Narragansett Bay. In this world of progress and privilege, the Underwood family epitomized the city's new aristocracy. Jonathan, aged 43, had amassed a fortune crafting precision instruments for the burgeoning railroad industry. His South Main Street workshop employed dozens, producing brass gauges and mechanical parts that kept America's trains on time. Beatrice, 38, hailed from a distinguished New England family. Her father, a retired whaling captain, had transitioned to managing textile investments. Their Federal Hill mansion, erected in 1887, was a marvel of Victorian architecture, with bay windows that bathed its polished hardwood floors in golden light and cast long shadows in the evening. Maintaining such a grand home required constant effort. Coal had to be shoveled into the basement furnace, gas lamps needed daily tending, and intricate decor demanded meticulous care. Like many wealthy families, the Underwoods relied on domestic servants, but finding reliable help was increasingly difficult. Young immigrant women, once the backbone of household staffs, were drawn to the mills, where wages were higher and independence greater. This shortage prompted Beatrice to place an advertisement in the Providence Journal on March 15, 1904, seeking an experienced housekeeper of good character with strong references. Elizabeth Hayes answered the call, arriving at the Underwood mansion on a dreary March morning. She carried a modest leather satchel and wore a plain black dress that suggested both respectability and a hint of mourning. In her early 40s, with prematurely gray hair pulled tightly back and piercing blue eyes that seemed to absorb every detail, Elizabeth exuded quiet competence. Her references, penned on fine stationery from families in Boston and Hartford, lauded her discretion, household expertise, and ability to care for delicate women prone to nervous ailments. During her interview, Beatrice was struck by Elizabeth's intuitive grasp of Victorian household management. She navigated gas fixtures with ease, understood the nuances of coal stoves, and handled Beatrice's prized crystal collection with deft precision. When asked about the scars on her right hand, Elizabeth dismissed them as remnants of a kitchen mishap from years past. Her confident movements and soft Irish lilt put Beatrice at ease, and she was hired on the spot. That same afternoon, Jonathan, an enthusiast of new technology, used his recently purchased Kodak camera to document the household. The resulting photograph showed Jonathan standing beside Beatrice's chair, his hand on her shoulder, while Beatrice sat with her hands clasped, her diamond earrings and sapphire brooch catching the light. Elizabeth stood behind, her scarred hand resting lightly on the chair's back in a gesture that seemed protective yet oddly possessive. Unnoticed by the Underwoods, Elizabeth's gaze lingered on Beatrice's jewelry, cataloging its value with a practiced eye. The photograph, meant as a routine record, would later become a pivotal piece of evidence in a case that would shock New England. Elizabeth settled into her role with remarkable efficiency, rising before dawn to stoke the furnace, preparing meals with precision, and maintaining the mansion's pristine condition. She anticipated Beatrice's needs, brewing Jonathan's coffee to his exact taste and offering remedies for Beatrice's frequent headaches. Mrs. Underwood seems worn by her duties. Elizabeth would murmur to Jonathan, her tone laced with concern. The strain of society and this grand house must exhaust her. Perhaps she needs more rest. Her suggestions, delivered with apparent care, led Jonathan to curtail Beatrice's social engagements, isolating her from the vibrant social life she cherished. Victorian mansions were intricate systems of gas pipes, hot air ducts, and early electrical wiring, often poorly understood even by their owners. Elizabeth studied these systems with obsessive care, tracing pipes and wires as if mapping a battlefield. She learned how to manipulate gas fixtures to create subtle leaks or adjust furnace dampers to produce faint but disorienting fumes. By late May, Beatrice began confiding in Elizabeth about troubling dreams, vivid nightmares of suffocation, and falling that left her drenched in sweat and convinced someone had entered her room at night. Elizabeth listened with feigned sympathy, suggesting the gas lamp in Beatrice's bedroom might be burning improperly. "These old fixtures can be fickle," she said, adjusting the lamp with expert hands. "Fumes can disturb sleep and cause such dreams." What Beatrice didn't know was that Elizabeth's adjustments could release just enough gas to weaken her without raising immediate alarm. On May 29, 1904, tragedy struck. Jonathan was away at a business dinner, leaving Beatrice and Elizabeth alone in the mansion. They dined in the intimate breakfast room, Elizabeth's suggestion for a calming evening. The meal was simple yet elegant: roast chicken, garden vegetables, and wine Elizabeth recommended for its soothing effects. Over dinner, Elizabeth spoke of her past employers, particularly a Boston woman who, like Beatrice, had struggled with societal pressures. She felt trapped by expectations. Elizabeth said softly, her scarred hand patting Beatrice's. It weighed on her until the end. Beatrice, lulled by Elizabeth's empathy, shared her own anxieties about her role as a wife and hostess, unaware of the danger sitting across from her. After dinner, Elizabeth helped Beatrice prepare for bed, brushing her hair with gentle strokes and ensuring the room was properly aired. The gas lamp burned steadily, casting flickering shadows. Elizabeth bid Beatrice good night with a maternal kiss on the forehead before retiring to her quarters. Hours later, Beatrice was found at the bottom of the mansion's grand staircase, her neck broken in an apparent fall. Her silk nightgown was intact, but her diamond earrings and sapphire brooch were missing from her jewelry box. Elizabeth's cries upon discovering the body drew neighbors, her grief so convincing that no one questioned her. When Jonathan returned, devastated, he found Elizabeth kneeling beside Beatrice, sobbing and cradling her head. The Providence Police Department, limited by the era's investigative methods, treated the case as a routine accident. Detective Captain William Brennan, a seasoned officer, examined the scene and concluded that Beatrice had likely risen in the night, perhaps disoriented, and tripped on the steep, polished staircase. Such incidents were common in Victorian homes, where gas leaks, slippery runners, and dim lighting posed constant hazards. Elizabeth recounted the evening's events clearly. She had served dinner, helped Beatrice retire, and heard nothing until discovering the body at 5:30 a.m. M. Jonathan, overwhelmed by grief, accepted the explanation, and the missing jewelry was attributed to misplacement amid the chaos. Brennan noted Elizabeth's scarred hand during her statement, but thought little of it when she explained it as an old injury from a Hartford kitchen accident. Elizabeth remained with Jonathan through the summer, managing the household with unwavering dedication as he mourned. By September, however, Jonathan decided to sell the mansion, its memories too painful. Elizabeth accepted her dismissal graciously, leaving with a glowing reference and plans to seek work in Hartford. In reality, she had no intention of leaving Rhode Island for long. The region's growing wealth and sprawling new mansions offered fertile ground for her deadly talents. Over the next 12 years, from 1906 to 1918, Elizabeth operated under various aliases: Catherine Lynch, Mary Sullivan, Helen Murphy, moving between Providence, Hartford, Boston, and Newport. She targeted the wives of newly wealthy industrialists, women often unprepared for the complexities of their elevated status. Her methods were chillingly consistent, yet varied enough to evade detection. She would gain a family's trust, isolate the wife by citing health concerns, and manipulate household systems to stage accidents, gas leaks, falls, electrical malfunctions, or poisonings disguised as natural ailments. Small valuables, particularly jewelry, often vanished in the aftermath, dismissed as lost or stolen during the confusion. Each death followed a similar pattern. The husband was absent, the wife was found by the housekeeper, and the tragedy was ruled accidental. Police departments, lacking centralized records or communication, investigated each case in isolation. Elizabeth's scarred hand appeared in reports across 4 states, described by witnesses who saw her as a grieving servant, not a suspect. Her ability to blend into the invisible role of a domestic worker, coupled with her knack for exploiting the emotional vulnerabilities of her victims, made her crimes nearly undetectable. In 1906, Margaret Tillinghast, the young wife of textile magnate David Tillinghast, became Elizabeth's next victim. Hired as Catherine Lynch, Elizabeth joined their Elmwood mansion and quickly ingratiated herself with Margaret, who was overwhelmed by her new social role. By December, Margaret was found dead in her bedroom, overcome by gas from a faulty chandelier. Elizabeth claimed she had noticed the lamp's odd flame, but hadn't had time to arrange repairs. Detective Brennan, now leading Providence's Detective Division, investigated but found no reason to suspect foul play. The missing jewelry was chalked up to routine maintenance, and Elizabeth's scarred hand, though noted, triggered only a vague sense of familiarity in Brennan's mind. This pattern repeated 13 more times over the next decade. Elizabeth's victims died in falls, gas poisonings, or sudden illnesses, each death meticulously planned to appear accidental. She varied her appearance, saltering her hair, softening her accent, or forging references to avoid recognition. Her success hinged on the era's limitations: no fingerprint databases, no interagency communication, and a societal blind spot towards servants. Wealthy families trusted her implicitly, and police saw her as a peripheral figure, her tears and detailed accounts deflecting suspicion. The turning point came in 1918 with the death of Eleanor Fitzgerald in Newport. Hired as Mary Sullivan, Elizabeth had been with the family for 6 weeks when Eleanor fell down the servants' stairs, reportedly investigating a midnight noise. The scene raised questions for Eleanor's nephew, Thomas Brennan, a young Harvard Law graduate with an interest in forensics. His father, Captain Brennan, had long spoken of the peculiar household accidents plaguing New England's elite. Thomas, suspecting foul play, examined the stairs and found them in perfect condition, with no evidence of the reported disturbance. Eleanor's missing jewelry, valuable pieces unlikely to have been misplaced, further fueled his suspicions. Thomas began a private investigation, cross-referencing police reports from similar cases. He discovered a chilling pattern: 16 deaths, each involving a recently hired housekeeper who discovered the body. Digging into his father's files, he found repeated mentions of a scarred right hand, described identically in cases spanning 1904 to 1918. The 1904 Underwood photograph, buried in Providence's archives, confirmed his theory. The woman in the image, Elizabeth Hayes, matched his memory of Mary Sullivan from the Fitzgerald case, her scars unmistakable. Proving Elizabeth's guilt required meticulous work. Thomas and Captain Brennan requested case files from multiple jurisdictions, a slow process given the era's fragmented record-keeping. They traced Elizabeth's movements, linking her aliases to employment records and suspicious deaths. In May 1920, a Hartford employment agency reported placing a Helen Murphy with a Stamford family. Her description, including the scarred hand, matched Elizabeth perfectly. Stamford police placed her under surveillance, observing her isolate her new employer, Dorothy Whitman, and tamper with gas fixtures. On June 15, 1920, Captain Brennan arrested her as she left the Whitman house. Her calm acceptance, "I wondered how long it would take," betraying her awareness of her crimes. Elizabeth's trial in Providence Superior Court, beginning October 3, 1920, captivated New England. The prosecution, aided by Thomas, presented a damning case. The Underwood photograph, police reports documenting her scars, and testimony from survivors like Dorothy Whitman, who described Elizabeth's manipulative tactics. A Boston psychiatrist testified that Elizabeth's crimes stemmed from a deep, seated resentment of the privileged women she served, viewing their deaths as justice for their perceived ingratitude. The recovered jewelry, necklaces, earrings, and bracelets from 16 victims, served as chilling trophies of her success. Elizabeth remained impassive throughout the trial, showing no remorse. Her defense, claiming coincidence and the dangers of Victorian homes, crumbled under the weight of evidence. After a 6-week trial, the jury convicted her of 16 counts of first-degree murder in under 3 hours. Judge Harrison Blackstone sentenced her to death, condemning her betrayal of trust. Elizabeth's execution on March 15, 1922, marked the end of her 18-year reign of terror. Her final words, "They never deserved what they had," revealed a mind unburdened by guilt. The case reshaped criminal investigation, prompting better record-keeping and interagency cooperation. It also exposed the vulnerabilities of isolated, trusting women and the invisibility of domestic workers, conditions Elizabeth exploited with ruthless precision. The 1904 photograph, with its scarred hand frozen in time, became a symbol of overlooked evidence that, once understood, brought a prolific killer to justice.